This story is titled, Older Brother Stole My Younger Brother's Fiancée, Destroyed Our Family, and Karma Finally Hit. Hey everyone. So, I'm not the type to air my personal stuff online, but this has been eating me up inside. I guess I just need to put it out there to process everything. So, my family is all about loyalty. Like, it wasn't just something our mom said to sound wise. It was our unofficial family motto. At the end of the day, all you've got is family, she'd say. And for a long time, I believed it. There were 4 of us kids. Alex, the oldest at 29, Sarah, the second at 26, me at 24, and Jake, the youngest at 22. Each of us had a role in the family, whether we chose it or not. Alex was the golden child. If you know the type, effortlessly good at everything, charming as hell, and just enough obliviousness to make you forgive his flaws. That's Alex. He was the quarterback in high school, got into a decent college without trying too hard, and always seemed to have people wrapped around his finger. But Alex's charm had its downsides. He wasn't mean or cruel, but he was selfish in that casual, clueless way that makes you feel like you're being unreasonable if you call it out. He'd eat the last slice of pizza without checking if anyone else wanted it, borrow your favorite jacket and return it stained, talk over you at dinner because his story was more interesting. Little stuff, you know? It didn't seem like a big deal at the time, but it added up. Then there was Sarah, 26, the practical one. Sarah was the person who kept things together. If Alex's ego needed to be reined in, or Jake needed advice on how to deal with a professor, Sarah was the one we turned to. She had no time for drama, but somehow always got pulled into it because she hated leaving things unresolved. She had this way of making you feel like she cared without coddling you, which was great for me because I'm the one who's always been, well, a bit indecisive. I guess that's my role, the middle one trying to figure it all out. I wasn't as flashy as Alex or as grounded as Sarah. I've always been somewhere in between, doing my best to keep up with the expectations placed on me while not stepping on anyone's toes. Then there was Jake, the youngest. Jake was quiet, not shy, just observant. He was the kind of guy who wouldn't say much during a conversation, but would throw in one comment that completely nailed the situation. People underestimated him a lot, but that was a mistake. Jake was always watching, figuring out how things worked, and planning his next move. He wasn't the most confident person in the room, but he had a good heart and a sharp mind. Growing up, Mom made sure we stuck together. It didn't matter who messed up, the whole family paid for it. Missed a chore? Everyone got lectured. One bad report card? Group study sessions were enforced. We complained about it, of course, but deep down, I think we appreciated it. That structure made us feel like we were in it together. For a long time, that loyalty worked. If someone picked on Jake, Alex would step in. If Alex got too full of himself, Sarah would bring him back down to earth. And if I felt stuck, Jake would give me perspective. It wasn't perfect, what family is, but we had each other's backs, no matter what. Then things started to change, and it all began with when Jake met his girlfriend Emma. Jake and Emma's relationship started off like something out of a rom-com. At least that's how Jake described it. They met at work, and Emma was the bubbly, confident type who could make friends with anyone. Jake was quieter, more serious, but somehow they just clicked. Opposites attract, I guess. When Jake first told us about her, he couldn't stop smiling. She's amazing, he said. Funny, smart, doesn't take herself too seriously. I really think she might be the one. It was a big deal for Jake to say that because he's not the type to get swept up in feelings. He's the kind of guy who overthinks everything. But with Emma, he seemed sure. The first time Emma came over to meet the family, she fit in so well it was almost weird. You know how it can be awkward when someone new is introduced to a tight-knit group? Not with Emma. She was charming, funny. She made everyone feel at ease. Even Sarah, who's naturally skeptical of new people, warmed up to her right away. She's great, Sarah told me later. Jake's lucky to have found her. And honestly, I agreed. At the time, it seemed like Emma was exactly what Jake needed. When Alex met Emma that evening, they clicked together quickly. They had this undeniable chemistry that everyone noticed. Alex, being his usual self, tried to test her with his witty sarcasm and dry humor. Emma didn't miss a beat. She fired back with her own clever retorts, leaving Alex genuinely impressed. It was like watching a masterclass in banter. They spent half the night exchanging playful jabs, and by the end of it, even Alex had a big grin on his face. However, for a while, everything seemed perfect. Jake and Emma were inseparable, but in a healthy way. They'd spend weekends hiking, trying out new restaurants, or just hanging out at home watching movies. Jake was happier than I'd ever seen him. But as time went on, Emma, normally, started to visit the family house more often, and things started to shift. At first, it was subtle. So subtle I wondered if I was imagining it. That's when I started noticing more things. Emma and Alex seemed to have this connection. Nothing outright inappropriate, just little things. They'd laugh at inside jokes Jake didn't seem to be in on. During one of the family dinners, Emma always ended up sitting next to Alex, and their conversations were animated in a way that made the rest of us fade into the background. Jake didn't say anything at first, but I noticed the way his smile would falter when Emma and Alex were talking. I brushed it off. That's just Emma, I told myself. She's outgoing and Alex is magnetic. It doesn't mean anything. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Looking back, I realized that the cracks in our family dynamic started forming long before anyone noticed. Alex had always been self-centered, but this was different. And Jake, who had spent so much of his life idolizing Alex, was starting to see him in a new light. Then came the day Jake brought Emma to our regular Sunday family dinner. Right away, I began to sense a bigger shift. During dinner, Emma and Alex started joking about something that had happened at work. They were laughing so hard they were practically in tears, and Jake was just sitting there, smiling politely. It wasn't anything significant, but it made me uncomfortable for some reason I couldn't put my finger on. Later that evening, Sarah pulled me aside. Is it just me, or does Emma seem really friendly with Alex? She asked. I shrugged it off. They're just getting along. You know how Alex is. People are drawn to him. But Sarah gave me a look. Yeah, but Jake's her boyfriend, not Alex. I didn't have an answer for that. But since Sarah started to notice too, then obviously there is something wrong. As the weeks went by, those little moments started piling up. Emma and Alex would laugh at inside jokes Jake didn't seem to be part of. During family gatherings, Emma always seemed to gravitate toward Alex, and they'd have these animated conversations that left everyone else out. Jake didn't say anything, but I could tell he was noticing it too. One time, we were all at a barbecue at Sarah's house. Jake had gone inside to grab drinks for everyone, and I was sitting on the patio, watching Emma and Alex talk. They were standing pretty close, laughing about something. When Jake came back, Emma quickly stepped away from Alex, like she'd been caught doing something she shouldn't. Jake didn't say anything, but his face tightened. A few days later, Jake called me out of the blue. Hey, can I ask you something? He said, sounding hesitant. Sure, I replied, wondering what was on his mind. Do you think Emma and Alex are too close? He asked. I was caught off guard. What do you mean? Jake sighed. I don't know. It's just, sometimes it feels like they have this thing. Like I'm not even in the room when they're talking. Am I overthinking this? I didn't know what to say. On one hand, I wanted to reassure him, because I didn't want to make him feel worse. But on the other hand, I'd noticed it too. I think Emma's just outgoing, I said finally. And you know how Alex is. He has that effect on people. I'm sure it's nothing. Jake didn't sound convinced. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's been bothering me. From that point on, it was impossible not to notice. At the next family dinner, Emma and Alex were at it again, laughing, joking, and practically finishing each other's sentences. Jake was unusually quiet, just picking at his food. After dinner, he pulled me aside. You saw it, didn't you? He asked, his voice low. Saw what? I said, trying to play dumb. Come on, don't do that, he said, frustration creeping into his tone. You know what I'm talking about. The way they're acting. It's not normal. I didn't know what to say. Look, I get it, I admitted. It's weird. But maybe it's just a personality thing. Emma's outgoing and Alex is, well, Alex. Jake shook his head. I don't think so, he said quietly. Something's off. Things only got worse from there. One night, we were at a game night at Mom's house. Just us siblings and Emma. We were playing charades and Emma was up. Alex kept shouting guesses, and every time she laughed, it felt like Jake disappeared. By the end of the night, Jake looked like he was barely holding it together. When we left, Jake turned to me. I need to know if I'm crazy or if there's something going on, he said. I didn't have an answer for him. I didn't want to fill his head with suspicions, while I myself was not sure of what's happening between those two. But after what happened, I wish I'd said something sooner. Maybe it wouldn't have changed anything, but at least Jake wouldn't have felt so alone. At the time, though, I kept telling myself it wasn't my place to get involved. However, as things heated up, it became clear that something was about to explode, and we were all going to feel it. After Jake confided in me about feeling uneasy with how close Emma and Alex seemed, I figured things would cool down. I mean, maybe Emma would pick up on Jake's vibe and dial back the overly friendly stuff, or Alex would get bored and move on to whatever was next in his orbit. Instead, the tension started creeping into every family interaction. It wasn't like there was one big, obvious moment where everything blew up. Not yet, at least. It was more like a series of tiny cracks forming in the foundation until the whole thing felt ready to collapse. One night, Sarah invited all of us over to her place for dinner. She was big on these sibling get-togethers. Said it was her way of keeping us grounded now that we were all adults. It was supposed to be a relaxed evening, But from the moment Emma and Alex arrived, something felt off. Jake had been quieter than usual lately, and that night was no different. He mostly stayed in the background, letting everyone else talk. Emma, on the other hand, was her usual bubbly self, cracking jokes and making conversation. And Alex was soaking it all in like he was the main character in the room, as usual. At one point, Emma and Alex ended up in the kitchen together, while the rest of us stayed in the living room. I don't know what they were talking about, but there was a lot of laughter. Too much, honestly. Jake glanced toward the kitchen a couple of times but didn't say anything. Sarah noticed too and gave me this look like, "Are you seeing this?" When they finally came back, Jake barely made eye contact with either of them. His whole mood shifted and did not talk to Emma directly for the rest of the evening. A couple of weeks later, Mom hosted one of her classic Sunday dinners. These were a big deal in our family, a tradition she insisted on, even when we all had other things going on. Normally, Jake loved these dinners. He'd joke around with Sarah, ask Mom about her garden, and actually seem relaxed for a few hours. But this time, he was so different. Emma and Alex showed up together, which wasn't unusual since Emma was practically part of the family by now. What was unusual was how they seemed to be in their own world, laughing about some stupid story Alex was telling. I didn't catch all the details, but the way they interacted felt too familiar. Jake was sitting across from them, not saying much. At one point, Emma reached over to touch Alex's arm while laughing, and I swear I saw Jake's jaw tighten. He didn't make a scene, but you could feel the tension in the air. Even Mom, who's usually oblivious to stuff like this, kept glancing between them like she was trying to figure out what was going on. The final straw came during a random weekday. I was at work when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Jake. "Jake, she's gone." That was all it said. I was confused, so I immediately called him, and when he picked up, his voice was shaky. "She left," he said. "She packed up her stuff and said she's in love with Alex." I didn't know what to say. "Alex?" I asked, like I needed to hear it again to believe it. "Yeah," Jake said bitterly. "My own brother." By the time I got to Jake's place that evening, he was a wreck. The living room was a mess. Stuff scattered everywhere, like he'd been too angry to care where anything landed. A picture of him and Emma was lying face down on the floor. Jake was sitting on the couch, staring at nothing. "She didn't even try to hide it," he said when I sat down next to him. "She just said it like it wasn't a big deal. I'm in love with Alex." I didn't know what to say. "What do you want to do?" I asked finally. Jake just shook his head. "What can I do? She's gone, and Alex..." He paused, his voice shaking. "Alex isn't my brother anymore." The hurt in his eyes cut deep, and I felt my own anger rise, not just at Alex, but at the unfairness of it all. I put my arm around his shoulder, trying to offer some comfort. "Jake, I know this feels like the end of the world right now, but we're gonna get through this." I left Jake's place that night feeling like everything had changed. Our family, which had always been built on loyalty, trust, and having each other's backs, felt broken beyond repair. The fallout was just beginning, but even then, I knew things would never be the same. After Jake dropped the bomb about Emma leaving him for Alex, things in our family went from bad to worse. If I'm being honest, I think we all knew deep down something was off before this happened, but no one wanted to believe it could actually be true. I mean, who wants to admit that your brother would betray you like that? The day after Emma left, Jake didn't come to our mom's usual Sunday dinner, which was a first. He texted me that morning. "I'm not coming. Can you tell Mom?" I didn't blame him. Showing up and pretending everything was normal would have been impossible. When I told Mom Jake wasn't coming, she got that worried mom look. "What's going on?" she asked. I froze for a second. I wasn't sure if I should tell her everything, but what was the point in hiding it? "Emma left Jake," I said. "She's with Alex now." You'd think I'd told her the sky was falling. She looked completely stunned, like she couldn't process what I was saying. "What do you mean she's with Alex?" "They've been seeing each other behind Jake's back," I explained. "She told Jake she's in love with him." Mom just sat there for a moment, shaking her head. "No," she said. "Alex wouldn't do that. He wouldn't." I didn't respond. What was the point? It wasn't like I wanted to believe it either, but it was the truth. By the middle of the week, everyone in the family knew. Sarah was furious. She called me as soon as she heard. "What the hell is wrong with Alex?" she fumed. "Jake's his brother. How could he do something so disgusting?" I didn't have an answer. I mean, what do you even say to that? Dad, on the other hand, didn't waste time. He called Alex directly. I wasn't there for the call, but Jake told me Dad didn't hold back. "You're no son of mine," he said, before slamming the phone down. Dad's always been the kind of guy who believes in loyalty above all else, and this crossed every line imaginable. Sarah decided to confront Alex too. She called him once, let him have it, and then blocked his number. She didn't want anything to do with him after that. But Mom was different. She couldn't bring herself to cut Alex off. "She's still my son," she kept saying, as if that made everything okay. Jake was staying at my place by then, because he couldn't handle being in the house he'd shared with Emma. One night, Mom called and asked if I could get Jake to talk to her. "He won't answer my calls," she said. "I just want to make sure he's okay." When I brought it up to Jake, he shook his head. "I can't deal with her right now," he said. "She's just going to try to defend Alex, and I don't want to hear it." I didn't push him. Honestly, I couldn't blame him. A couple of weeks later, Mom invited us all over for dinner, saying she wanted to talk about moving forward as a family. Jake refused to go, but I decided to show up just to see what she had to say. When I walked into the dining room, I saw Alex sitting there. I almost turned around and left. I couldn't believe Mom had invited him without telling anyone. Sarah showed up a few minutes later, saw Alex, and immediately started yelling. "Are you serious, Mom? You think we're just going to sit here and play happy family with him after what he did?" Mom tried to calm her down, saying something about forgiveness and how we needed to stay united as a family. But Sarah wasn't having it. "He destroyed Jake," she shouted, "and you're acting like it's no big deal." Alex just sat there, not saying a word. I don't know if he was ashamed or if he just didn't care enough to defend himself. Either way, it made me sick. Sarah stormed out, and I followed her. "You coming?" she asked as she headed to her car. "Yeah," I said. "I can't sit in there with him." After that disaster of a dinner, things got even more strained. Jake stopped talking to Mom entirely. "She made her choice," he told me. "She chose Alex over me." Sarah and I still talked to Mom, but every conversation turned into an argument. "He's your brother," she'd say whenever we brought up Alex. "No," I told her one day. "A real brother wouldn't do what he did. He's on his own now." Then, out of nowhere, the news of Alex and Emma getting engaged came. They actually had the audacity to send out wedding invitations to the entire family. Like everything was fine. But none of us went. Not me, not Jake, not Sarah, and definitely not Dad. Mom, of course, went to the wedding. She even posted pictures on Facebook, smiling like she didn't have a care in the world. When Jake saw them, he just shook his head. "She's lost it," he said. Sarah was angrier. "She's acting like nothing happened," she said. "It's disgusting." After the wedding, it felt like Alex and Emma were trying to pretend the rest of us didn't exist. They posted their perfect life all over social media. Pictures of their new house, vacation photos, gushy anniversary posts. But the rest of us? We pretended they didn't exist either. As for Jake, despite everything, he's not the type to seek confrontation or cause harm. He's hurt and angry, sure. But deep down, I think he's just trying to make sense of it all and move on with his life. I don't think he'll ever confront Alex directly or do anything drastic. That's just not who he is. Instead, he's focusing on healing and rebuilding his life without Emma. It's been a tough journey, but I believe in Jake. He's resilient, and while the scars of betrayal will always be there, he's finding strength in his own way. It's been tough, but we're slowly finding our way without them. Family gatherings are different now, quieter, but we're sticking together. I wish I could say things are back to normal, but the truth is, it's a new kind of norm. I'll keep you all posted on how things unfold. There's bound to be more drama down the line. And who knows? Maybe some reconciliation too. Thanks for sticking with me through this wild ride. Stay tuned for updates. Update 1. Alright, here's the update I promised. Things have been quiet for a while on the Alex and Emma front. Or at least that's what I thought. None of us really kept tabs on them after the wedding. We'd cut them off entirely. Jake was rebuilding his life, Sarah was focused on her career, and Dad wouldn't even let Alex's name come up in conversation. Mom was the only one still keeping in touch with him, but even she avoided bringing him up too much around the rest of us. Then, out of nowhere, Mom called me one evening. Her voice was shaky, like she was on the verge of tears. "Alex needs us," she said. Now, I wasn't in the mood to play therapist for Alex, so I almost ignored her, but something about her tone made me curious. "What happened?" I asked, already bracing myself for some ridiculous drama. "It's Emma," she said, her voice trembling. "He caught her cheating." I couldn't help it. I laughed. Yeah, I know it wasn't the most mature reaction, but come on. The irony of it all was too much. "With who?" I asked, already half expecting her answer. "His best friend," she said, sounding horrified. I nearly dropped my phone. Wait, what? Apparently, Alex had walked in on Emma and his best friend, let's call him Chris, while they were in the middle of something. He confronted them, and Emma didn't even try to deny it. She told him she'd been unhappy for a while and that she and Chris had a connection. Hearing this was like a cruelest joke ever. I mean, Alex destroyed Jake's life for Emma, only to have her turn around and do the same thing to him. If karma exists, this had to be it. When I told Jake about it, he just shrugged. "Figures," he said. I was surprised by how calm he was. Doesn't it make you feel better, knowing he's getting a taste of his own medicine? I asked. Jake thought about it for a second, then shook his head. Not really. It doesn't change what he did to me. That hit me hard. Jake wasn't bitter or angry anymore. He was just done. Alex didn't matter to him anymore. It was like he'd closed that chapter and moved on, and honestly, I was proud of him for that. Sarah, on the other hand, had plenty to say when I told her. Serves him right, she said, laughing. I hope it hurts as much as it hurt Jake. Even Dad, who rarely said much about Alex these days, weighed in. That boy made his choices, he said. Now he has to live with them. Mom, predictably, was trying to rally the family around Alex. He's heartbroken, she told me. We need to support him. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Support him? After what he did to Jake, I snapped. She made a mistake, she said, using her go-to excuse for Alex's behavior. No, Mom, I said firmly. A mistake is forgetting someone's birthday. This was a deliberate choice, over and over again. He doesn't get a free pass just because he's your son. Alex started calling me after everything went down, but I ignored his calls. I didn't want to hear his sob story. I mean, what was I supposed to say? Sorry your life fell apart, but you kind of brought it on yourself? Jake told me Alex tried reaching out to him too, but he blocked his number immediately. I don't want to hear it, Jake said. He made his bed. Meanwhile, Mom kept trying to push for some kind of family reunion. She even suggested having Alex over for Sunday dinner, which went over about as well as you'd expect. Are you serious? Sarah said when Mom brought it up. Do you think Jake's going to sit across from Alex at the table and pretend everything's fine? Because that's not happening. Mom sighed. He's still your brother, she said, as if that was supposed to magically fix everything. No, Sarah replied coldly. He's not. As for Alex and Emma, it didn't take long for their perfect little life to crumble. Emma moved in with Chris almost immediately after Alex found out about the affair. They didn't even try to keep things low-key, posting pictures on social media like they hadn't left a trail of destruction behind them. Alex, from what I heard through Mom, was a complete wreck. He'd been staying with a friend, trying to figure out what to do next. Mom said he cried when he told her about everything, saying he didn't know how things had gone so wrong. I didn't have the heart to tell her it was pretty obvious how things had gone wrong. Alex had destroyed his family for Emma, and now he was paying the price. At this point, none of us felt sorry for Alex. Not Jake, not Sarah, not me, and definitely not Dad. Mom was the only one still holding on to the idea that we could somehow come back from all of this, but the rest of us had moved on. Jake started focusing on himself and his future. Sarah threw herself into her career and barely mentioned Alex anymore. Dad? He found peace in cutting Alex out entirely. As for me, I finally stopped feeling like I had to play mediator. I wasn't going to pretend everything was fine anymore. Alex made his choices, and now he was living with the consequences. That's the latest. If you think this is the end of the story, you might be right. Or maybe not. Either way, I'm glad I don't have to deal with their drama anymore. Final update. All right, guys. Here's the final update, or at least I think it is. After a few months from my last update, things have taken a turn, and I honestly didn't see it coming. You'd think after everything that's happened, we'd all just go our separate ways and let the mess settle. But no, life had a little more chaos in store. So, after the whole Emma and Chris situation blew up, Alex went into full-on damage control. He kept messaging all of us, me, Sarah, and even Jake, trying to explain himself, but none of us replied. Then came the twist I didn't expect. Chris dumped Emma. Yup, the guy she left Alex for kicked her to the curb a few weeks after they moved in together. From what Mom told me, because of course she was still talking to Emma, Chris wasn't ready for a serious commitment. I guess stealing another man's fiancée wasn't enough excitement for him. Emma apparently tried to go back to Alex after that. She called him, crying and saying she made a mistake. I don't know which mistake she meant since she has too many. But Alex, shockingly, didn't take her back. She betrayed me, he told Mom. I can't trust her anymore. It's ironic, isn't it? The woman Alex destroyed his family for ended up doing to him what he did to Jake. If I weren't so annoyed with the whole situation, I might have laughed. Here's where things get even messier. Mom, bless her heart, decided this was the perfect time to push for reconciliation. She called me one night, all excited, and said, Alex wants to talk to Jake. He's ready to apologize and make things right. I almost dropped my phone. Mom, are you serious? Jake doesn't want to hear from Alex. He's moved on. He's still his brother, she said, like that magically erased everything Alex had done. I told her to drop it, but of course she didn't listen. Instead, she tried to stage an intervention. She invited Jake over to her house without telling him Alex would be there. Jake showed up, thinking it was just a normal visit, only to find Alex sitting at the kitchen table. From what Jake told me later, It took everything in him not to turn around and walk out immediately. "What's he doing here?" Jake asked, glaring at Mom. "I just thought you two could talk," Mom said, her voice all hopeful and annoying. "There's nothing to talk about," Jake said. Alex, to his credit, tried to apologize. He said all the right things. How he was sorry for hurting Jake, how he'd made the biggest mistake of his life, how he'd give anything to take it back. But Jake wasn't having it. "You didn't just hurt me," he said. "You destroyed our family. You made your choice, Alex. Live with it." And with that, he walked out. When Jake told me about it, I could tell he was still upset, not because he regretted what he said, but because Mom had put him in that position. "I can't believe she did that to me," he said. "She's supposed to have my back." I didn't have much to say. I mean, I agreed with him. Mom's constant need to fix things has only made everything worse. As for Alex, I haven't heard much from him since then. From what Mom says, he's been trying to work on himself, whatever that means. He's still living alone, still trying to rebuild his life after Emma. Jake, on the other hand, is doing better than I've seen him in years. He's back at the gym, hanging out with friends, and even started seeing someone new. He's not rushing into anything serious, but he seems genuinely happy for the first time in a long time. Sarah's thriving too. She's been focused on her career and doesn't waste any energy on Alex or Emma anymore. "They're not my problem," she says every time Mom brings them up. "Dad? He's stayed out of all of it. He hasn't spoken to Alex since the fallout, and I doubt he ever will. For him, family loyalty is sacred, and Alex broke that in the worst way possible. As for me, I'm just glad it's all behind us. I don't feel the need to keep tabs on Alex or wonder what's going on in his life. He made his choices, and we all had to live with the consequences. But now we're moving forward, one step at a time. So, yeah, that's where things stand. Alex is out of our lives, and honestly, we're all better off for it. That's the final update. Thanks for sticking with me through this mess. Here's hoping the next chapter of life is a little less dramatic.